Economists use the term the East Asian miracle to describe one of the most extraordinary economic transformations in human history. That's because within a few years, countries that were in abject poverty rose to become some of the richest countries on earth. And most people assume that East Asia became wealthy because they embraced technology. Technology came after, it came later. They firstly solved much more fundamental problems. Each person's success reduced the psychological barrier for the next person. Now we arrive at the real question. Can one African country become what Japan became for East Asia? Hi there and welcome back to another video. My name is Odoanyo, your host, and like always today we're discussing the African continent and basically spotlighting different areas of this continent and encouraging us to build Africa for ourselves, by ourselves, and then the rest of the world. So there is a question that I stumbled upon while I was making my research for this episode, and based on that research, I realized that people had been asking the question, or every few years somebody raises a question, and it was also actually the title of a book. And I'd like to pose that question to you today. Can Africa work the way Asia worked? And honestly, again, the goal is not comparison, right? It's just to see how these things have worked for other countries, other continents, and see how it can actually work for us as well. So can Africa work the way Asia worked? And you might be asking, how exactly did Asia work? That's why I'm here. So let's answer this question first. How exactly did Asia work? So Asia here, I'm not trying to portray the Asian continent as an economic model. So the Asian continent is home to 4 billion people, dozens of political systems, religions, and economies. But when people talk about the Asian miracle, they're referring to one specific region, and that region is East Asia. And economists use the term the East Asian miracle to describe one of the most extraordinary economic transformations in human history. And that's not because East Asians are more intelligent or they have more resources than the rest of the world. That's because within a few years, countries that were in abject poverty rose to become some of the richest countries on earth. Examples like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and lastly, China. And today they are associated with automobiles, semiconductors, electronics, high-speed rails, robotics, and global manufacturing. But let's rewind the world back to 70 years ago, or 80 years ago, if time permits. The picture was completely different. It looked completely different. After the Second World War, Japan's cities were reduced to rubble. South Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world after the Korean War. Taiwan was overwhelmingly agricultural, and China, after decades of civil war, was one of the poorest countries in the world. In 1981, according to the World Bank, nearly 90% of the China population lived in extreme poverty by international standards. And today, that figure has fallen under 1%. Between 1981 and 2020, China lifted 800 million people out of poverty. And that is by far the largest poverty reduction in the history of man. Let's think about it, because that's more people than the entire population of the continent of Europe, more than twice the population of the United States. And no country has ever reduced poverty to that scale. And as China's economy emerged, new conversations came up. Conversations on family wealth, on inheritance, on estate planning, on private investment. And these are conversations that are associated with accumulated wealth, not just subsistence. And that illustrates just how profound China's transformation has been. And most people assume that East Asia became wealthy because they embraced technology. Technology came after, it came later. Before Japan became home to Toyota, before South Korea became home to Samsung, and before Taiwan dominated the semiconductor manufacturing, they firstly solved much more fundamental problems. One, they increased agricultural productivity, and two, they invested heavily in education. Thirdly, they built manufacturing capacity, and they consistently exported more sophisticated products to the world. Technology was not the starting point, it was the outcome. Every industrial revolution begins with food. Honestly, if farmers become more productive, fewer people are needed to feed the population. Because honestly, hunger is most likely the number one reason why people are not actually innovating enough. Agriculture doesn't have to be glamorous. It just has to be done. And when people are being fed, it will lay the foundation for industrialization. So East Asia focused on two things: agriculture and manufacturing. Agriculture creates stability, manufacturing creates wealth. And that's because manufacturing multiplies value. Manufacturing allows countries to export knowledge, to export engineering, branding, and skilled labor, not just raw materials. And that is exactly what East Asia mastered. And economists have another concept that rarely enters public conversation, and that concept is called the demonstration effect. A simple way to put it: success is contagious. And when one country proves that something can be achieved, the neighboring countries also tend to imitate these things. And when one is successful at it, it means that the other can also be successful at it. And so that was what happened in East Asia. Neighboring countries also began believing that they also can do it too. And it started with Japan. They industrialized first, and South Korea imitated Japan. They studied them. Taiwan also studied Japan. Singapore learned from both, and China basically studied all of them to put together. Each person's success reduced the psychological barrier for the next person. They became mirrors of possibility for one another. They could see it, success was visible to them, and visible success is incredibly persuasive. And now we arrive at the real question: can one African country become what Japan became for East Asia? Imagine one African country just rapidly growing, not because of oil, not because of diamonds, but because of productivity, effective institution, competitive manufacturing, agricultural modernization, reliable infrastructure. Just imagine the impact. People will not just report it, people will see it, and it would spark up possibility in them, just like it did in East Asia. And this is where Africa becomes especially interesting. Remember that in episode 2, we spoke about Asia and Europe having the east west axis, while Africa and the Americas have the north south axis. Well, in this case, that actually matters. Because moving from Morocco to South Africa means crossing deserts, Mediterranean climate, tropical forests, savannas, highlands, and temperate regions. It means that one agricultural solution will not work everywhere. It means that one industrial strategy may require adaptation. And in that sense, the demonstration effects in Africa may spread slower than it did in Asia. But that doesn't mean impossible. It just means that we have to learn the ways things work and adapt to them. And I think now is actually a good time to do that, because technology is going to make the movement of people and information easy. Today's Africa has advantages that the previous generations did not. Technology, digital communication, because with that, ideas will spread instantly. A successful model in one country no longer needs decades to become visible in another part of the world. Technology, digital communication makes all of that seamless. Really, the biggest lesson from East Asia is not that Africa should copy Asia or copy China. The real lesson is that prosperity leaves clues. Countries become wealthier when they consistently raise productivity, invest in people, build industries, and create institutions that reward long-term growth. The question isn't whether Africa can become the next Asia. The question is whether Africa can become the first Africa to unlock that level of coordination, that discipline, and sustained execution. Because history suggests something remarkable. Sometimes it only takes one country to prove what is possible. And once possibility becomes reality, hope is no longer theoretical, it becomes contagious. Because what you can see, you can become. Africa doesn't need to become the next Asia. Africa needs to become the next version of itself, investing in agriculture, education, manufacturing. We can get there. If Asia can do it, we can as well do it. And that's why I don't buy the idea of people saying one person is monopolizing the oil sector. In the case of monopoly, it means that you're not giving other people room. It just makes it easy when one person has achieved something. It shows that it is possible for somebody else to achieve it. And so instead of seeing it as somebody monopolizing the economy or the sector, it is a mirror of possibility. It is demonstration effect, just like we have seen today. East Asia developed out of abject poverty. I strongly believe that Africa can do it as well. We can. We just need to invest in the right things, in agriculture, in manufacturing, in education. That's our secret. That is the secret. That is the way. And that's why this channel exists. Just something to encourage us to know that this continent can be built as well. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to this channel, like, drop a comment, share this video with someone that you think is as passionate about the African continent as we are. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video to the very end. I hope that you enjoyed and you learned something at least. And also, you are actually propelled to move, to desire to just build or do better for this continent. We can do it. We will do it. I strongly believe that we will. Anyways, thank you for staying to the end, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe and share with someone. I'm watching. Bye.